Hello everybody, welcome back to the New Nation. This is video number 2, so we are going to read pages 8 through 13. If you don't already have your actual magazine with you, go ahead and grab it. Pause this video if you need to. When you're ready, go ahead and turn to page 8. Pioneers settle new states and territories. Have you ever wished you didn't have to spend so much time studying indoors? If you were the child of pioneers or the first people to settle in a place, you wouldn't be going to school as much. You wouldn't have time. Like their parents, most kids on the frontier had a lot of work to do, planting crops, churning butter, carrying water for laundry, and more. Daniel Drake, to the right, was 2 when his parents moved to Kentucky in 1787. By age 8, he was up before sunrise to feed the farm animals, help his dad plant crops, and help his mom make cloth. This hardworking kid still got an education and became a well-known frontier doctor. Let's take a look at these maps of the United States. U.S. population 1800, people per square mile. So it looks like the darker the color, more people in an area. You can see they're very populated in what was the first 13 colonies. Up here, New York, it's up here. Not very many people out here. But then, U.S. population 1820, just 20 years later, there's a lot more people out here. This color has spread, and it got darker over here, so there's more people in these cities. Let's read the caption. More and more pioneers began settling west of the Appalachian Mountains. The Appalachian Mountains are like right here. I hope you can see right here. On this map, they're kind of right here. You can see this light color, so they're not really settling in the mountains, but they're settling to the west, this way to the left. You can see this has gotten much darker. West of the mountains has gotten much darker. By 1820, that number grew to 20%. For example, in 1800, about 5,000 people lived in what is now Indiana. By 1820, about 140,000 more settlers had moved there. Indiana is about, like right here. Very cool. More and more people. In this image, life could be difficult on the frontier, which is the land beyond the settled part of the country. But at least people had plenty of natural resources, especially trees. Early pioneers cut them down to build log cabins. Stacked on top of each other, the logs fit together, and gaps were filled with mud or moss. These small homes usually had just 1 or 2 rooms, and often no windows, but they did have fireplaces, where pioneers burned wood for warmth, cooking, and light. Looks like this one has a little window, but it's hard to imagine having to build my own house. People do that as a job now. Page 9. Do you recognize him? Abraham Lincoln had a hard life as a pioneer boy. When his parents moved to the Northwest Territory in 1816, they did not even build a log cabin. For most of the winter, they stayed in a 3-sided shelter made of logs and branches. Interesting, I didn't know that. This cartoon. Getting up early was a way of life for pioneers. Men, women, and children had different jobs to do. For example, men and boys looked after the crops in the fields. Women and girls did many chores, cooking, sewing, nursing, washing clothes, and even teaching. Everyone took care of the farm animals. This is a cool map. Check this out. The United States in 1800. Got the first 13 colonies here with their states today. In this area we called the Southwest Territory and the Mississippi Territory. They weren't even states yet. We called this the Indiana Territory, Northwest Territory, which is funny. Well, that's where Abraham Lincoln lived. Louisiana, I think that's what that says, which belonged to France at this time in 1800. Oregon Country, And then all of this was Spanish lands. As more settlers moved west, new states like Kentucky and Tennessee were formed. The population of the Northwest Territory grew too, including the area that would become Ohio. More people began traveling on the Ohio River, as well as other rivers in the area. Towns sprang up along these waterways. One of them was Marietta, in what is now Ohio, which became an important trading center for the Northwest Territory. All right, the Northwest Territory is all the way over here. We live over here. That's here. Bottom of page 9, this image here. Some free African Americans moved to the Northwest Territory, where slavery had been outlawed in 1787. One of them was John Melvin, who became captain of a canal boat in 1840. He didn't just transport passengers and goods. He also used the boat to carry enslaved people to freedom along the Ohio River and Erie Canal. That's awesome. Think piece. How does your life compare to a pioneer kid's life? If you could, would you go back in time and trade places? Why or why not? I like that question. Pages 10 and 11. Meet Tall Paul. The legend of Paul Bunyan. The legends of Paul Bunyan were some of the young republic's most famous tall tales, or exaggerated adventure stories. Loggers in Wisconsin first told wild stories about the biggest, bravest, smartest lumberjack and his giant friend, Babe the Blue Ox. The stories helped pass the time in logging camps. They also helped keep men's minds off the dangers of loneliness of the lumberjack life. The stories were make-believe, but there was some truth in them. After all, loggers did have to be brave and strong. It's a cool statue. Page 11. Skating on Bacon. Here are some of the tall tales they told about Paul Bunyan and his blue ox, Babe. So they said, Babe was so big her eyes were 7 axe handles apart. Wow. For a snack, Babe would eat 50 bales of hay. When she drank from a river, she drank it dry. Paul Bunyan could knock down every tree for miles with just one sneeze. His griddle was so big it had to be greased by men skating around with slabs of bacon tied to their feet. He created Puget Sound, close to Seattle, the Grand Canyon, and the Black Hills. Whoa. Paul Bunyan stood 35 feet tall. Paul Bunyan cut down so many trees he turned North and South Dakota into prairies. When Paul Bunyan shouted, he knocked all the branches off the trees. His and Babe's footsteps created all the lakes in Minnesota. People say there are 10,000 lakes there. Very interesting. Go ahead and turn now to page 12. Up top on page 12, Exploring the West. In 1803, the Louisiana Purchase doubled the size of the United States. President Thomas Jefferson wanted to make sure settlers could freely move west. Meanwhile, France was getting ready for war with the British and needed to raise money. So it sold a huge territory, more than 800,000 square miles, to the United States for $15 million. The land stretched from the city of New Orleans up to Canada, and from the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains. What was out there? To learn more about the area's resources and geography, Jefferson gave former Army officer Meriwether Lewis and his friend William Clark a job: explore the new land. Lewis and Clark led a group of about 30 people across the Louisiana Purchase and beyond, all the way to the Pacific Ocean. But they weren't the only ones who explored the West. Back to page 12 here. This is the Louisiana Purchase, this pink area. If we go back to page, what page is this? 9. That's this area right here. France used to own it, But they needed money, so they sold it to the United States. So this became ours. And you can see there's some routes here from different people as they went to explore what was out here. The new settlers didn't know at the time. This image here, one member of Lewis and Clark's Corps of Discovery was a young Lemhi-Shoshone Indian woman named Sacagawea. She served as a guide and interpreter. Her presence also showed that the explorers meant no harm to the American Indians they met. As Clark wrote in his journal, "A woman with a party of men is a token of peace." Sacagawea made the entire journey carrying her infant son, Pomp. Page 13. This image here. Pike and... Oh, well, let's read about him first, actually. In 1806, U.S. Army Lieutenant Zebulon Pike was sent to explore the southwestern part of the Louisiana Purchase. He and his men found the Front Range of the Rocky Mountains in what is today Colorado. One of the mountains was named Pikes Peak in his honor. It's a very popular peak. You can drive all the way to the top, actually. In this image now, Pike and his group traveled south along the Rocky Mountains and accidentally passed into Santa Fe, New Mexico, which was then owned by Spain. The Spanish who lived there arrested the group for trespassing, or entering their land without permission. The Spanish held them as prisoners for several months. Wow, look at this beautiful map. You can tell it's an old map. Trying to make sense of it. This is the Puget Sound, what is today Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana. This was back then called Oregon Territory, and down here, what is today California, Nevada, Colorado, was Spain. Spain owned that at the time. So the caption for this map reads, "Another American military officer also explored the West. In 1843, the U.S. government hired John C. Fremont to explore, map, and report on the area. He charted trails in Utah and California and mapped the Oregon Trail." Pike helped open up trade in the Southwest. At the time, most goods in Santa Fe were imported from Spain. It often took these imported items years to travel the thousands of miles across land and sea. Pike spread the word that Santa Fe was in need of goods. All right, my friends, we learned about exploring the West, the tall tales of Paul Bunyan, and about population as it grew in the United States. So that's the end of video 2. Come back for video 3.